think we'll get started. Again, I appreciate everyone here that's here on time today. It's great to see you again for our second week of class. So we're going to start with a centering exercise. So I ask you to kind of begin by finding a comfortable seated position. And I want you to allow your shoulders to soften, your hands to rest naturally, and your breath to settle into its own rhythm. So as you inhale, imagine drawing in a soft light from the vastness around you. A light as wide as the night sky. And with each exhale, release any tension you carry within your body. The to-do list, the expectations, the chatter of the mind. Just let them all fall away just for these few moments. Now imagine above you a wide, star-filled sky, a spacious, compassionate universe that holds all beings with equal dignity and care. Allow yourself to feel connected to that spaciousness. Feel yourself part of something vast, loving, and alive. Now, with your next breath, bring your awareness gently to your heart. Here, imagine a small point of light, steady and warm. This is the inner source of love, curiosity, and kindness that guides your work as an educator. Now watch this light expand outward with each inhale, softly radiating into your chest, your shoulders, your hands. As this light expands, sense that it touches all beings, your students, your colleagues, your community, and all the countless lives beyond your daily view. In Neohumanism, we honor this weak, widened circle, the recognition that every being, every child, every creature, every part of nature is included in our love. Now take a slow, deep breath. Feel the light within you meeting the vast light around you. A gentle reminder that you're never separate, never alone. You're part of an interconnected whole. Now I ask you for the next few breaths, simply rest in this feeling, open-hearted, grounded, and spacious. Let the galaxy hold you as though you are floating between inner calm and infinite possibility. And when you're ready, bring your awareness back to the room. Begin to feel your feet on the floor, your breath in your body, and the quiet clarity that surrounds you. And I ask you to carry this spaciousness with you as we continue, remembering that every lesson, every interaction is an opportunity to extend love outward and to nurture the unfolding humanity in ourselves and in others. And welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Krishna Prema. That was a great introduction to tonight's topics. Um, Couple of things before we start our activities. This is week 2 of 6 weeks of NHE 104. And Krishna Prema and I really appreciate everyone coming on time. It makes our life much easier. And I think improves this experience for everybody. So thank you. Also, really enjoyed reading those of you who submitted your work this weekend. If it came in late last night or today, it might not have been read yet, but it will be read right away. I did ask all of our readers, including Didi Topamaya, who's here, and Nirmal, who comes on Monday nights, to be in contact with all of you and let you know who the reader of your work um, will be. So if in a day or two you haven't heard from any of the teaching assistants or the instructors, please email me and let me know so we can make sure that we have somebody reading your work. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Christy, who's going to facilitate our small group discussions of the educational autobiographies.
Thank you, Kathleen. So yeah, we're going to jump right into it today. So today we're going to be beginning with a theme on how our personal histories shape our being. And especially, we're looking at how our educational experiences shape the way we think about learning, teaching, and children. So, as you can hopefully remember and recall from last week, we introduced six major philosophies that have influenced education. And you hopefully had the opportunity to read part of chapter one, which explored these ideas more deeply. And the assignment was to write your own educational autobiography to see which philosophy was most present in your schooling. So now we're going to take some time in some small groups and share these stories. And so in this space, you guys can either kind of cherry pick some ideas out of the stories that you wrote, or if you just want to, more organically share some stories that you feel relevant to this time and space. Um, we will divide into language-specific groups. Each we asked to have we'll have a facilitator, somebody to keep time so everybody has an opportunity, and then somebody to take some notes so when we come back to the larger group, we can have somebody report what was shared. And as you share, I kind of would like you to think about some questions. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to stick to just these questions, but these are just kind of some prompts to help you within the groups. And I'll put these in the chat. What shaped the way you saw yourself as a learner? What values or assumptions about education came from this experience? And what did you learn about yourself while writing this story? So we're going to have, what do you say, Kathleen, about 25 minutes, or do you still want to give them? Okay. So we're going to have about 25 minutes in the groups. There'll be, I believe there's going to be five groups. We're going to have one Portuguese group and so four groups, sorry. And there'll be three English groups. And I believe, are you ready to divide us up, Scott?
Yes, I'm doing it now.
Okay. Let me put those questions in the chat.
And do you want to say who the facilitators are?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Kathleen. Let's see. Okay. So in group one, we have facilitated by Erica and is it Perkinanda? So we have two facilitators in that room. In group two, we have Didi Tapamaya. In group three, I believe Kathleen will be taking over facilitating, and I'll be in group four. Looks like we still have some people entering the room, so hopefully we can get them all into their rooms too. All right. As people keep joining, I just want to make sure we get everybody back in here before we get started on the sharing. So welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone did have an opportunity to share their story. So now that we're in the collective space, I just want to offer an opportunity, a short, brief time, just to, if we could just share each room, maybe share just a few common themes that maybe came up in your group, um, or maybe philosophies that seem to be most influential in your stories, or anything maybe you learned about yourself or about education. So we can start with group one, and
So, how
yeah,
much time would we have?
we don't. We're a little. Kathleen, where is Kathleen? You're muted, Kathleen.
About 2 or 3 minutes each group.
Yeah, yes. So if group one would like to start,
Yeah, I can tell what people were discussing.
thank you,
So
Ari.
we were talking about, most of us, the influence of mechanicist education in our lives, especially in early childhood, and a strong influence of perennialism through Christian schools and behaviorism later on, after we had a military government backed by the US. So it started a kind of neo-colonialism, and the tool was the education. No? So we should not have a creativity and not have any kind of thinking outside of the box. And some of us suffered with that until now, like a lack of creativity or critical thinking. But most of us, or all of us, had this late revolt in relation to that traditional, conventional, and mechanicist education. And one of the tools was the study of spiritual philosophies, especially from the East, no? So Buddhism, Hinduism, and yoga, and some, like Soma, were blessed because she had an early education with more space and space for critical thinking, and also her father taught her yoga. But most of us, we search for that kind of solution, and we all felt that a spiritual dimension was lacking. So that is why we are here.
Thank you, Ari. Thank you. Did anybody have any comments or anything you would add, or we can move on to group two, and that would be Didi Tapamaya's group.
Okay. In our group, I joined a little bit later because of technical issues, but I think the first person was telling about how she was surrounded by nature when she was growing up, and it was a small group. So I think it was a positive experience for her. And then there was someone who had grew up in a system where there was lots of physical punishment, and she said that it's still prevailing in her country. And then Dada was telling about his childhood and his schooling, which was North American, which was a lot of socializing, and there was a peer pressure to belong to a certain group. And then there was a person who said that actually there was this term she used, that there was depression, and even to a point that teenagers were talking about suicide. So quite a bleak memories from certain systems of education in Europe. And then when we had the second round, we talked about also about activism, because some people, when they were young, they became activists. So that was really nice. And then we were telling jokes. So, but please add something if I missed something.
Yeah, maybe I can add something. Because in the list you gave of the influences, I think one thing that was missing, that I think in Europe was very, very strong, is existentialism, which is a philosophy that started in France with Sartre, and it had a lot of influence in the culture of education, more than education in itself, in Europe in the in the 70s and 80s. And for example, I was very influenced by that, by all the culture around me. Yeah.
Thank you, Didi. Thank you. So group three, which would have been Kathleen's group. Does somebody from that group want to share?
Yes, I will share what I can do.
Thank
So
you, Ellen.
Kathleen, maybe you can add, because we couldn't hear everything because internet was not quite well at every moment. But we had different participants from Nigeria, and I heard that there were a lot of challenges during education. Maybe Kathleen, you can say it in a good way, but what I was hearing is that there was some challenges in speaking in the local language and in English, but I don't know what the challenge exactly was. Maybe Kathleen can explain it a little bit more. And that another participant was small or a little bit shy during education, and I think he felt the need that he could express himself more, but I don't also know if that's the correct way how to tell it. Then there was a participant who was telling that she had different influences from her parents, that she experienced a whole set of values during her education. And my own experience is that in my education, actually, I was privileged in some way. I think had education that was quite well in an intellectual way, and there was space for creativity. But there was sometimes less space for emotions and expression. So I missed sometimes the holistic education to be fully myself. But although that was my experience, I know that I was privileged in my education. That's what I want to tell you. So Kathleen, please add something about our fellows from
Well,
Nigeria.
I
and
think
from,
I think you covered it very well, and we did have connectivity problems from Nigeria. But what I took away from the Nigerian presentations was some of the real challenges of rural schooling in many countries. The children are expected to care for family members, so they might not be able to attend school. And Aga really helped us understand the importance of the local language. I think he taught himself the local language much later in life. And so that was, if we keep in mind Sarkar's emphasis on teaching in the local language, I think that's an important thing to remember. Otherwise, I think you summarized it perfectly well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Kathleen. So the final group, Yulia, do you feel comfortable sharing?
I can share, but if can you help me in some
Of course,
moments?
of course, of course.
What I remember from the last speaker, that our participant, she was left-handed, and in the school they knit, how to say?
Yeah, so she was left-handed, so
Wrapped up her hand.
yeah, they wrapped up
Yeah,
her hand,
and
tied her
put
hand
it,
back.
yes, so that she would write with left hand.
Oh,
But she was in young age, and it was she somehow took it as a good thing, because then she could write with both hands, and it didn't make trauma to her. And also in later time, it helped to adapt to different difficult situations without trauma. The second person, all this schooling thing and lessons didn't emphasize so much, didn't influence so much, sorry. But the father always told, you should be real human. And that's like the guideline for the person. And it made him, as a human being, formed him. So he was trying to be a real human being despite all the things. From my experience, I remember that I was sabotaging all these home tasks, and I was not doing my homework, and I was always challenging myself what to do, how to come without being prepared, and it's feeling like you are not ideal person because you have to come, but you are not. You didn't do anything, so what to do? And it makes my mind a little bit vivid and creative. And I remember all the lessons that were a little bit artistic and creative, and that's what I remember. And also, I remember like a teacher from literature, for example, she asks, what do you think is in this poem or in this? What do you feel? What do you think? And when you give answer, she was saying, "No, this is not right." So, yeah, and this such teachers, so you don't want to learn in such conditions. And the last was from Haiti experience, and this person went to church school, correct? And
Catholic school,
there
yes.
was a lot of discipline, and it helped to now the person became Dada, and it helps to be to all this discipline
Huh.
to run. And also, the school was privileged, and it made some complexes in some ways. It was expensive school, but I a little bit misunderstood. Maybe you can say why complexes arise.
No, I appreciate it. I think Yulia did a fantastic job. I really did. Thank you. Yeah, I think one thing that there's a lot of parallel themes, even though we're coming from a global environment. I think there was a lot of, and that was one thing I think that Yulia touched in our room, that the ability to overcome some of these adversities and adaptability and turning these kind of into these positive situations. And we found that to be and I think that was shared last night in the evening section too. A lot of common themes that came apart away from this. So I appreciate everybody taking the time today to share and to really to share your personal stories, because I think that's where we're really gonna learn and grow from. So now we are gonna move forward. And as we, just something to think about, um, you know, the schooling we received, kind of like a lot of us talked about that conventional education. And as you might have noticed, that it often reflects the priorities of the dominant group in society, even like when it's not always so obvious day-to-day life. So, it's kind of something to think about, what is school ultimately designed to produce? And, we're trying to change that story, and that's what we're going to be listening to and having a time to talk about as this class goes on today. So the reflections today really should help us see how deeply our own personal histories do influence our assumptions and our teaching and how we learn. And it really does set the stage for today's exploration of cosmology, ontology, and metaphysics. So I'm going to pass it on to Kathleen. And again, I just thank you guys for really leaning in today on the discussion.
Thank you, Christy. Very interesting. Yeah, I do think it's important to unpack our own history so that we uh, don't replicate a system that we didn't work for us, and we are self-reflective about what we're doing. I'm going to do a little mini lecture. It will probably last about 20 minutes. A lot of very complex ideas. And I wanted to let you know that when I post the PowerPoint in the classroom, I've also posted my lecture notes. So everything I say, you'll be able to read again if you need to. I don't expect that we can absorb all of this in one day, but some of it you may have come across before, certainly. First of all, the definitions. These are three very big topics in philosophy, and they are related, but they're slightly different. And there are three of the main topics that Sarkar put forward in terms of developing a theory of education. First of all, with cosmology, is really the physics of creation. It really looks at the physical study of the origin, the nature, and the structure of the universe. So cosmologists talk about the Big Bang, for example, and the way that matter and stardust began to coalesce. Metaphysics is, what that really means is beyond physics. So it's not the physical study of the universe, but it is the fundamental nature of reality and existence. So metaphysics looks at things like, what is consciousness, and what's the relationship between the individual mind, or the unit mind, as Sarkar says, and the whole. And what is the connection between mind and matter? This is actually, even with all the neuroscientific research, not a problem that's been completely solved by science. Ontology then takes all of these sort of big cosmic ideas and really is the study of the human being itself. What does it mean to be human? And how do we find our purpose in life? So those are the three definitions, and all cultures have metaphysical, cosmological, and ontological stories. And I've put many of we don't have a lot of Portuguese speakers in this class on Tuesdays, but I have tried to put the second language interpretation of these quotes down. Ursula Guin is a great Western writer. And she says there have been great societies that did not use the wheel, but there has never been a society that did not tell stories. So this sort of reinforces the idea of narrative and how humans have explained all these big questions to ourselves through millennia. So again, the origins of life, many, many different stories. If we go clockwise, starting at the top, some of you may be familiar with the Native American idea that the earth is held up on the turtle's back, and the turtle is named Hanuna. And many tribes, their mythic stories believe that the earth was formed on the turtle's back. And that's one reason why many Native people call North America Turtle Island. So, and going clockwise, you can see the Abrahamic religions have the story of Adam and Eve. Adam being the first man created from the dust of the earth, and Eve, his companion, created from his rib. And these are believed to be the ancestors of all humanity. Moving clockwise down the circle, we have Vishnu sitting on the back of Ananta, the king of all serpents. And Ananta represents eternity and the infinite expanse of the universe. And then we finish up here clockwise with some Aboriginal art. I'm fascinated with the Aboriginal art of Australia, which it's a beautiful genre of art, and it illustrates what the Aboriginal people, or the original people, call dream time. Very complex philosophy that attempts to explain how the land was created and how the ancestors came to the country. So again, the origins of life are cosmological questions. Is there a creator? Why? Why was the universe created? What was the purpose of creation? And also, how did life come about? So the modern humanist story, as we talked about last week, is that we have left all myth and mystery behind. That's old stuff, and we've traveled on to enlightenment. And modern Western people, for the most part, believe that science and human ingenuity now rules the world. As we also talked about last week, some of this story is crumbling a bit under the weight of the destructive power that the misuse of science and technology has brought to the planet. So, a number of modern or postmodern physicists and cosmologists are suggesting that there's a new story emerging, and that we are in between stories. We're in between the old stories of the myth and the Enlightenment and the sort of various crises that we're living through, and that there's a new story on the horizon. And Brian Swim, who's an evolutionary cosmologist, says that the new story that's emerging overwhelms all previous conceptions of the universe because it draws them all into its comprehensive fullness. So we're looking at a new story that is attempting to unite the science and the discoveries of science with ancient spiritual wisdom. Sarkar himself, in the book Liberation of Intellect, I believe this quote comes from, has promised a bright new era and says that human civilization now faces the final moment of a critical juncture. That's a pretty powerful statement, a critical juncture. The dawn of a glorious new era is on one side and the worn out skeleton of the past on the other. And he challenges humans to adopt either of these two. And I think we can see that in the various events of the world now. People tend to be on the side of trying to maintain the old story, and generating a very new story. And we'll look at the outlines of that new story. Same quote in Portuguese. So what does it mean when he says we need to bury the worn out skeleton of the past? My interpretation of that is that we need to bury the remains of the isms that divide us, that conquer us and destroy us. The isms that cause conflict, that cause war. And I named these, and you may have some other ideas about it, but I think predatory capitalism, egocentric individualism. We looked at this idea of human exceptionalism last week. Rampant materialism, anthropocentrism, which is the centering and the importance of the human above all other creatures. Sexism, of course, racism, ethnocentrism, which is the belief that one's culture is superior to all the others, ageism, social classism, and ableism. So that's my list. And I believe that when we can put these tired bones to rest, we might actually be able to breathe the invigorating air of the new story. So what is this story? Brian Swim, the cosmologist quoted, calls it a cosmic creation story. And he believes that this new story is bringing about a new era of global human and planetary health. And I want to look for a minute at the streams of thought that are feeding this new story. First of all, when we talk about physics, and especially quantum mechanics, we know that it's telling us a very new story. Quantum mechanics, astrophysics, the study of the cosmos, and some of you may be familiar with chaos or complexity theory. So these stories are all shaping a new way of understanding experience. First of all, it reminds us, all through history, people have thought the earth was a solid given thing that did not change. Like Aristotle had the great chain of being, and And of course, people thought that the Earth was the center of the universe at one point. But we now know that the universe is not static, that it's expanding moment by moment into new space, not into old space, but into new space. So it's in a constant state of creation. It's a dynamic and emergent reality. And physicists for a long time thought that the universe was solely constructed of isolated individual atomic particles. And so much of physics has been devoted to exploring smaller and smaller and smaller particles. And I'm not a physicist, but I believe the quark is where we've sort of ended up. And they haven't figured out how to explain anything smaller than a quark. But many physicists are now saying that beyond the tiniest particle is energy. It's a field of energy, a quantum interconnected field that permeates all space. It's invisible, it's intangible, but it is it's everywhere surrounding us. It's non-material, and they call it a vibrating field of potential. This is fascinating to me because it suggests an affinity with the ancient, very ancient story of Shiva and Shakti, which many of you know about from your study of yoga. The idea that there's a formless, generative cosmic consciousness. Shiva's the archetypal form for that. Some people call it God, the void, the Tao, but a field of consciousness. And when it unites with the creative impulse, which the tantrics call Shakti, this gives form to consciousness. So this idea of a unified field is very consistent with the ancient wisdom of yoga. And it is suggests that there's an enduring and ongoing creativity in the universe. So this all comes very close to trying to get rid of comes very close to acknowledging our common source. The common source being what many people call cosmic consciousness, and not just in the origin of the Big Bang. We know from the Big Bang theory that all of us are created of the same material stuff, the stardust, the minerals, the molecules. But we also have a common source in this universal consciousness. And they are suggesting, the scientists even are suggesting that their consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe. And I think the new part of the story is that consciousness is present in all matter. And this is really a shift from the idea that nature or most matter is merely matter, and suggests that there is consciousness and even intelligence in matter. And that's something we can explore further. But the new story also talks about what I call the multidimensionality of the human being. And I think all of you are aware that there's many relatively untapped potentials of consciousness. We know that through a disciplined contemplative practice, that the mind is capable of much more than we thought. And there's a wonderful book out called Altered Traits, which documents hundreds of studies on meditation. And all of the studies point to the sort of unrealized dimensions of the human mind. And it's a causal level of cognition that encompasses everything in the universe, the past, the present, and the future. So it's a very exciting time for studies in meditation. There's one physicist, and I'll post a little YouTube video in our classroom where he talks about it. Sarbjeet Kanwal. He's got an interesting perspective that I think you'll find a lot of resonance with the Sangha Yoga. And he claims that in order to activate the higher vibrational frequencies that would connect our unit minds or our limited consciousness to the cosmic whole requires, and he said, this is his quote, working through the layers of identity that separate us from our cosmic origins. So he believes that the great cosmic story of our origin reveals that every entity in the cosmos resides within this evolutionary wholeness. And I think it's quite easy to see that this idea of our oneness with all of creation resonates with the neo-humanist principle of the sentiments and the need to transcend the limiting sentiments. He calls them vibrational frequencies, geo-sentiment, social sentiment, human sentiment, that we need to integrate but transcend these limiting identities to really connect with cosmic consciousness. Now, of course, this new story is really an old story. And we know, despite the 500 years of Enlightenment science, that since the beginning of time, many people have recognized the universe as a sacred space and a human connection to the creator of all life. The only thing that makes this a new story is that we're sort of coming full circle to a point where scientific discoveries and perspectives about the origin of the universe and human purpose and the nature of consciousness are beginning to connect with older spiritual and cultural perspectives. So that's what makes the new story a new story. Now, aside from physics, the new story is also coming to us from evolutionary biology. And this is an outgrowth of the idea that all of creation is alive, it's intelligent, and it's self-organizing, meaning it can direct its own activities. I happen to be just fascinated with the new research in plant intelligence and animal intelligence that really is convincing me that there's a lot more going on in the natural world than we have ever really understood. And it's a story that tells of our entanglement. I love that word, entanglement, that we no longer can feel separate from nature, but that we're very much part of this interconnected web of life. And I think that explains, to some extent, Sarkar's emphasis over 40 years ago on developing this love for all creation. People were not ready, maybe, to hear about the depth of our connection, but now the scientists are coming around and saying, hey, it's all alive, we are all connected. And the new story from Western science really parallels some of the older indigenous perspectives, the idea of kinship with non-human others. I know that Native people in North America who I have spent time with recognize that everything exists as not as mindless matter, but as sentient beings. So we are reminded that nature is not a collection of objects, but it's a flow of processes. It's about relationships. It's about the trees and humans exchanging carbon and oxygen. It's about the soil that gives us life and health, etc. It's a biocentric vision. This basically just means life-centered rather than human-centered. And I like this little graph because it shows the egocentric shows the human dominating. It's at the top. It can do whatever it wants with nature. It can destroy habitat. It can extract minerals without consequences. And the shift over to a biocentric vision in which we really understand that everything is connected to everything else. And with this understanding comes the capacity for empathy. And empathy gives us the capacity to really cultivate meaning and purpose in our lives. So I think it's a very important idea for children is how do we like communicate this interconnected aspect of creation? So we begin to see that we're not alone. And if many of you may remember a very popular quote from P.R. Sarkar, I hope I say it correctly. You are never alone. The force that guides the stars guides you. And this is not merely an inspirational statement, it's actually true. We are not isolated, we're not trapped inside our skin, but we're porous. We're really part of everything. We're nourished by all of creation, and creation can be nourished by humans as well. But I think we can also understand that everything we do, whether it's the food we eat or what we buy or how we spend our time, everything has consequences for everything else. And that's a powerful, powerful principle in neo-humanist education is helping young people understand that what they do, how they live, matters. And hopefully with the discovery of meaning and purpose in their lives, we can help young people overcome the tragedy of mental illness, of suicidal thoughts, of despair, of fear, and help them understand the new story. So I'll close with just a touching on neo-humanism and ontological metaphysics. Remember that this new paradigm really it's the blueprint of the new story, what neo-humanists is giving us. It is talks about humanity's potential for a far richer experience, for a new ecological consciousness, and hopefully the idea of creating harmony between humans and the rest of creation, and the cultivation of wisdom. We don't just want an information society, we want to create wisdom. And at the core of this ontology, I would remind us, is the tantric metaphysical principle known as Brahmachakra, which is very ancient, very old, but Sarkar has really sort of brought it into the modern world. And it is an interpretation basically specific to Tantra, but also connected to other spiritual perspectives. It's an interpretation of humanity's evolutionary cycle. So this eternal cycle is sort of built on this idea that from cosmic consciousness and the uniting with the creative force comes creation. And that's the extraversion of consciousness that makes itself known in matter, in molecules, in single-celled animals, the whole evolutionary process, which has turned Sanchara. And the theory in a nutshell is as matter evolves, and it does parallel much of evolutionary theory, it begins a return journey back to its source. And so when consciousness matter develops into conscious, self-reflective humans going through the stages of mammals and reptiles and all that, it's on its return journey to infinite consciousness called Prati Sanchara. And that's the yogic explanation for the longing that many people feel to become one with cosmic consciousness. So that's the sort of inner force that's guiding us on the spiritual journey. And I would suggest that an important part of that journey is becoming one with all of creation. That's why I titled our textbook, Becoming One with the World. And I think Sarkar was pointing us in that direction when he talked about the importance of extending the feelings of love and connection with all beings, and the idea of being committed to the welfare of all creation. So I would just close by saying there's a clamor for a new story, a worldview that would center life and the flourishing, and remind us that human beings are narrative creatures. We make sense of the world by telling stories, and these stories give us a moral template for how to act, how to live, what we belong to. So the way we make meaning of life is through stories, and I would suggest that education, all education, is the space that we have for making meaning. And education can either reinforce the dominant myth of isolation, of scarcity, of conflict, or it can open space for new narratives that are grounded in interconnection, in reciprocity, and regeneration, like so many of the older traditions do. So I'll close with the idea that if we want to transform our world system, we have to first transform the stories that sustains it and that can transform it. And education is really where those stories begin. So we all have a very big job ahead of us, I believe. And I will take a deep breath here and turn it back over to Christy, who is going to move us into a very brief discussion in groups of this new story.
Thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, I think I just want to echo that there is a paradigm shift, and not to put Yulia on the spot, but she's joining us as somebody that is a parent, and she just was reminding me in our breakout room, she was talking about creating some stories, in Russian. But I think, how powerful that is, just as, somebody that is inspired to share with their own children and then beyond that. So, yes, storytelling. So like Kathleen said, we're going to be moving into small groups. But before we do that, I just want to kind of bring these big ideas from today down to maybe a little bit of our lived experience. And as Kathleen really emphasized, this idea of a new story, and this new story, at the heart of it is relationality. So the understanding that everything is connected. And children just don't learn through philosophy. They definitely learn a lot through the way we show up as educators, as parents, as people that they're going to be looking up to in their lives. And teachers become the first model of empathy, curiosity, and kinship with the living world. And when we're aware of our own histories and patterns, like things that we discussed within our autobiographies and also within the small groups earlier, we can better guide children without repeating the old limiting stories from our past. So now I want you to think about that as what that looks like in practice. So in small groups today, we're going to brainstorm how we can begin to transmit this new story to young people and what specifically in neo-humanist education is dedicated to this. And kind of one good starting point is the kind of thinking about the cultivation of love and kinship with humans and non-humans. And what might this look like? Maybe in daily school life or in activities, relationships, routines, or classroom culture. And I think, how much time do you think we're going to be able to have? We've
I
got
think
it.
20, maybe 15 or 20 if we want to come back with the whole group.
Yeah, because it's already 7:30. Um,
Yeah,
so maybe 15?
15 sounds good.
Okay, so Scott, could you set up the breakout rooms for 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you. We all back, I think, for most of us? All right, I hope. Did you have enough time, everyone? Kathleen, you're muted.
More or less.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have.
And how do we proceed? Just sum up.
Yeah, we'll just we've got a few minutes. So yes, if anybody would like to, each group want to share just a little bit, maybe just about 2 minutes from the group, that would be fantastic. If you want to start, Ari, that would.
Okay. I have some noise at the background. I hope you don't can hear me. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, everybody was telling that we should connect it first. The educator should be more connected with nature. If possible, the school spaces should offer this quality of nature around. And many of us said that the child has this quality of connection with nature, no? And there is a child just trying. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. So let's try to concentrate here. But this connection, no, should just be fostered. And if the educator doesn't have that quality of having himself, herself, connection, deep connection with nature, that would lead the whole education towards another direction. So if we really want to give space for children to be uh, lovers of our brothers and sisters from nature, no? We should ourselves be in connection with that. And some people gave example, like Fabiola was teaching her son about caring about the plants, because here, if you need to plant, you need to cut some trees. And then he was not so sensitive about plants. So she started to calling every plant by a name, its name, no? So the young boy is already growing a consciousness and taking care about the plants. And similarly, we have the example of Amaya that has this devotional sentiment and that expands to nature. And she offered this to her daughters, and especially the new one, the youngest one, is really connected to all the animals. And when she goes outside to collect a fruit from a tree, she uh, says that she's grateful and all that. So we would like also to implement in the schools here. And we have some educators that are already applying neo-humanist education here. And they use kinds of projects, specific things about plants, about folk tales that talk about animals and the relation with nature, and then also use some kind of meditation or silence or intuitive kind of art to promote that sense in the child, starting with her own feelings, his or her own feelings, no? So basically, is that.
Thank you,
To put,
Arvi.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was fantastic. Right, a lot of great grounded ideas. The next group, Didi Tapamaya's group, I believe it would be.
Yes, and this group also had really, really nice ideas, and similar to what the first group did, something that was also discussed, the idea that there would be buddy classrooms against countries and cultures, and they would communicate with each other, the school children in one class in one country, another, and they would exchange letters and videos, and enhance this idea that even though they're different culture, we all children and we all are inside, the life is same, their aspirations. And then the same thing about encouraging children particularly the question of autistic, that there is enhancing, nurturing this connection with their internal world through asanas and koshiki, making them like really listen to their own bodies, their own internal world, and then and how important it is to really be hands-on in nature and even learn science through watching how the cow is giving a birth to a calf, how where the milk comes from, where the eggs come from, and really having hands-on experience with the nature, being surrounded by embracing nature, and then when dealing with plants and rescued animals, really encouraging children just to observe, being present and observe, and then reflect on what do they really actually see when they are calm and they just observe, and then we were talking about storytelling, that it is still something that some of the students here are trying to understand, what does it really mean, and and uh, and then how the modern era, the stories that we are fed from mass media, from the arts, the films, they're quite poor. There's poverty in storytelling in the modern film industry, and so how then Baba encourages us to have this subjective experience and be the heroes of our own story. So that was that, and what's more.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you, everyone. I think the next group would be Kathleen's group. Maybe Ellen, you want to
And
share in?
Aga's going to start, and Ellen may follow.
Fantastic. Aga. I don't see. Oh, there's Aga. Aga, can you
Okay, there
unmute?
he is. Unmute, Aga.
Yeah, what did it say? Yes. What did it say? Sorry.
We were just asking if you could share some of the conversation, a couple just key moments from your breakout room.
Okay. Yeah, from our group, it's almost the same thing. We were talking about how the teacher can, through the instruction, help the children connect. And we were looking at some of the things like making the children have an assignment like planting trees or having a garden within the school environment. The school environment itself has to be nature friendly for the children to be able to connect to nature, to the environment. So also helping them, letting them know that the way you want to live is the way other animals too wants to live. As long as they are not harmful to you and your environment, that you do not need to kill them. In this part of the world, our educational curriculum, those that study biology, the ecosystem, explain it all, how important every living thing is, from the trees, the plants to other forms of animals. How if we can teach it to these children, understanding how important they are to life will help them to also connect and not to destroy the environment, because in one way or the other, the environment is useful to even us human, not just among the particular ecosystem where they are from.
Right.
So I think in general, we're talking about how the teacher should be able to help the children to connect to their environment using a planting of trees and guiding animals, emphasizing the importance of giving them life too, as you have life.
Thank you, Aga. Thank you. Yeah, and just because we are short on time, just quickly in our group with Patrick and Yulia, we paralleled a lot of what was already discussed. And one thing I thought that I really appreciate what Patrick brought forward was he talked about like, it's like a big ocean, but we're like the few drops of water. So everything just keeps exponentially growing. And they talked a lot about creating, embodying the philosophy to the children, and then also leveraging their own personal networks to expand that. So Yulia as a parent, so she can share the stories with other parents. And Patrick had a very developed plan on how to grow neo-humanist education within a community. So it was really powerful. And we even touched on social networks like social media and how that could be maybe positively leveraged, especially because in certain spaces, in certain countries and communities, it's where children are going or where, adolescents are, and maybe meeting the messaging there, and even parents use that as a source of information. So yeah, it was a very, very great discussion. So again, thank you everyone. Apologize about the little bit of rush here on this group discussion, but I hope everybody got a lot of value out of it, and it was great to hear everybody's reflections. So before we open up about really quick about next week's assignment, just to reflect on this week's assignments, we're still missing some of the assignments, so please do your best to get those in. And a couple people would notice that they had a little trouble understanding the instructions. So last week's assignment was to pick two things from the reading and then paste them to the document and then reflect in your own words on, what you chose from the reading. And so it's important that we just want to hear from your own words, what you are getting from the reading. And if there's ever any confusion or just any doubts about the assignments, please feel free to reach out. We're here to support you and help you in this journey. And so for next week, you're gonna read all of chapter 1, and you already have read a portion of it. So to prepare what you guys did, your autobiography, and again, if you haven't done that, please get that turned in. And this chapter lays out the broad sweep of the content for the course. And so this week we're going to explore some very deep philosophical issues that highlighted an emergent synthesis of spiritual ideas from ancient wisdom traditions and new scientific discoveries. So the assignment is, imagine that you're writing a letter to prospective families for the new neo-humanist school you're starting. Using everyday language, and that's probably very key, how would you communicate the ideas about cosmology, metaphysics, and ontology and everyday language easily understood by parents interested in enrolling their child? And the suggested length is about 200 words. And just these aren't limiting. You don't have to use these, just some ideas to maybe kind of jumpstart some of your thinking process, your creativity. One idea is you could describe a typical activity in your school that reflects this aspect of the philosophy. Or another idea is, how does this aspect of the philosophy influence the teacher student relationships in your school? And again, these are not like, you do not need to follow these prompts. It was just suggestions. So please, use your creativity or your past experiences. Some of you guys might have already done this. So really looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
Great. Thank you, Christy. And just in closing, I believe I told you at the beginning of this class, we're dealing with some very theoretical issues, some very big philosophical issues. But what we want to do is bring it down to earth. We need to explore the practicality of these ideas. So this letter to parents is an opportunity for you to take some really complicated ideas, but put them in your own words and write about them in a way that invites people into the conversation. So I think it's a very good task to put to yourself. So that's my 2 cents worth. And it is due Saturday, the same
Yep.
time. And again, I want you to read the whole chapter. That's really important. But if you need some help understanding it, I have provided some adapted notes that are somewhat simplified and summarized. So hopefully that helps you. And as I said, you also have the lecture notes from the PowerPoint if you want to review those. So let us know if there's anything else we can do to make this class work for you. Right, Christy?
Correct. Please reach out. And I also added in the Google Classroom a short, it's like, I think it says resource tool. And we were talking about it in last class last night, that you can take a text and have it translated to an audio book. And I added a couple links to, I think they're free options, and there's probably plenty more, especially with the a lot of AI out there. But some people, some of the students last night were saying that was really helpful to, some were using it as they were reading, having the audio going at the same time, and some just, I think, we're audiobooks are a better fit for us. So those are another tool you can take advantage of. And yeah, and again, apologize for about being 2 minutes over, but we're working on the technical
We're
challenges. But thank you for bearing with us, and thank you for a wonderful class today.
see you next week.
See you.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Obrigado.